In Iraq, months-long protests in major cities led to the resignation of one prime minister, bowing to demands for reform. But political leaders have been unable to name a replacement, leaving protesters as animated as ever. NewsHour correspondent Lisa Desjardins takes a closer look at how the protests have led to the current political gridlock.
Basra tonight, streets lit by the glow of burning tires. The nation has no prime minister, and protesters today have sharply rejected the latest choice for the job by a leading political bloc. Assad al-Irani is currently a regional governor, but protesters see another entrenched politician.
What did Assad al-Irani offer? Did he fight corruption? It's still there. Has he brought back services? There are no services. Regarding you, Assad al-Irani, whatever you do, you will not gain the prime minister position.
Protesters have a pivotal ally, Iraqi President Barham Saleh. In the past day, he refused to designate the new nominee as prime minister, saying it would cause more bloodshed. That refusal may violate the Constitution, and President Saleh has offered to resign over the issue. Key in this political uprising have been the protests in Basra and surrounding Shiite areas in the south, and in Baghdad itself. The map shows another issue for protesters, the influence of neighboring Iran, which backs militias and political blocs in Iraq. Rejection of Iran's influence and an outcry against Iraqi corruption sparked a firestorm of protests that began in October. That led directly to the resignation of the last prime minister, Adel Abdul Mahdi, last month. More than 450 protesters have died, largely after security forces fired tear gas or live ammunition at them. This leaderless protest is demanding a politically independent leader.
We don't want a prime minister from these political parties. We want to topple the political regime, and we want to change the Constitution.
More fuel comes from the economy, anemic overall, with high unemployment among the young, and concern from those who do have jobs that their wages fall short.
My mother passed away at the hospital because there was no medicine, and I am a working man on daily payment, and I couldn't afford her treatment.
Tonight in Iraq, a country without a leader and a protest movement with no sign of backing down.
For more, I'm joined by Abbas Kadhim. He leads the Iraq Initiative at the Atlantic Council, a nonpartisan foreign policy think tank. He is also the author of Reclaiming Iraq, the 1920 Revolution and the Founding of the Modern State. Dr. Kadhim, thank you for coming back to NewsHour.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of faces in that story just now, and obviously this is the third time in a month that Iraq has been unable to name a prime minister. Why is this so difficult, and how far out of the norm is this?
Indeed, there are so many candidates, and all of them come from the same pool that is rejected by the protesters. The protesters are not protesting against a government or a party or a bloc. They are protesting against the entire political elite that has been in charge of Iraq since 2003 until now. The problems that have been accumulating in Iraq are the accumulation of 15, 16 years of failures, and people are fed up with everyone who was involved. So they are asking for faces that have not been involved in any stage of the past 15 years, and people whose hands have not been polluted by Iraqi money or blood or dignity of the Iraqi people. And that's why it is very hard to convince the parties to bring an outsider.
And that leads to another question, too. The protesters, much like Iraq's population itself, are generally young. 60%, right. I think, of Iraq is 24 years old or younger. They clearly, as you say, don't know what they do not want. But do these protesters know what they do want? Is there anything that will be acceptable to them?
That is the problem. So far, they have been only practicing their veto power. The parties are presenting names, or the media or others who are floating out names, and they are saying, no, we don't want this person. Because the protesters do not have an organizing committee or a central nerve that will coordinate every activity they have. They are dispersed all over the south and central Iraq. So it is very hard to speak to any group, or it is very hard also to find a spokesperson or an entity that will speak on their behalf. And it is very hard to see them presenting what they want. And it is easier to see that they will wait for the political elite to present a name or the process to bring up a name, and then the reaction is normally automatic. No, we don't want this one. Even though in the last couple of days we have seen some kind of signs that they might be entertaining some of the names that are being floating around, like Faiq al-Sheikh Ali, maybe, who is an MP and a member of parliament, and he is a secular member of parliament, and that is somehow in his favor because most of the parties that are being blamed are the Islamist parties or the traditional parties. He is kind of a new slant of a politician.
Do the average Iraqis agree with the protesters?
Do they?
The average Iraqi, do they side with the protesters? Is this sort of a general sentiment?
The protesters are speaking on behalf of all Iraqis. This is very hard. On the de facto, of course, they are the ones who are speaking. We don't see any counter demonstrations or any counter voices that are discrediting them from the other side. But of course, on the de jure side, the only way to know what the silent majority of the 40 million Iraqis want, if you have a referendum or if you have a general election, that's why we hope that the next government will prepare for a general election to know exactly where the Iraqis are standing now.
Who could benefit from instability in Iraq, however long this lasts?
A long list, of course. Certainly the neighboring countries come to mind first because they are benefiting. The weaker Iraq gets, the more vulnerable, the more they can settle their scores on the Iraqi theater, the more they can advance their interests inside Iraq. Iraq is a trophy. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, these are the ones that come to end. And also, of course, the terrorists. There is a lot of terrorism, sleeper cells and other terrorist organizations that are trying to find any ungoverned space to expand and stretch and practice their malicious activities. So that is that. Also, let's face it, the Iraqi political elite they are interested in this because law and order and the rule of law is hurting them more and is curbing their ability to practice their corruption.
One more question for you. How do Iraqis see the U.S.? Do they think the U.S. has any responsibility for the state of their nation right now, or no?
The United States is the midwife, if we can put it that way, that brought this change in 2003. So everything that we have is based on the activity of the United States from 2003 to 2011. But there is a lot of blame to go around, and I think a lot on the dysfunctionality of the government is on the Iraqis themselves because they cannot get their act together. But also, I think it is not just the United States. The average Iraqis, actually there is actual numbers that we presented at the Atlantic Council recently. Iraqis, over 80% of them view the American people in favor way, and about 20% only they favor the United States government. So there is that kind of dichotomy in the Iraqi public opinion.
Abbas Kadhim of the Atlantic Council, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.